Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. We're looking at what could be a turning point in the France 24 debate for Iraq and Syria, the retaking of a first major city by Iraqi government forces backed by militias, most of them Shiite, although not all, as says our guest from Baghdad, Zaid al-Ali, the author of The Struggle for Iraq's Future. Sorry, I said Baghdad again. You're in northern Iraq today. Thank you for being with us. I want to thank as well French Conservative Member of Parliament Jacques Mial for joining the conversation, David Adelman, Editor-in-Chief of World Policy Journal, and Tony Badran, Research Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Lots of reactions coming in from viewers to our discussion. Andrew saying reported victories in Tikrit should be taken with a grain of salt, given they came at the hands of Shia, Kurdish, and Sunni militias. All right, that's one reaction. Now, earlier we were telling you about that warning by Iraq's Prime Minister for his forces to spare civilians, Sunni civilians for the most part, in Tikrit. It's an important warning if they're going to win back the population and take back Iraq's second city, Mosul. That warning, though, too late it seems for one village 50 kilometers away. That's the claim of one of our citizen journalists, an eyewitness for the France 24 Observer's website. Mark Thompson has the story.
Tikrit is sealed off from all sides. That, according to senior Iraqi security officials. Saddam Hussein's hometown is at the center of a key battle between Islamic State group militants and the Iraqi military, backed by Shiite militias. The fighting has left residents in the Sunni stronghold in limbo, fearful of reprisal attacks by Shiite fighters. These amateur pictures show Abu Ajil days after it was taken from the Islamic State militants. The town east of Tikrit, among 3 to be taken by government fighters in the area this week. One resident told France 24 observers Shiite militias suspected large parts of the population of backing the radical Islamist group.
When the Shiite militias arrived, they started looting, burning, and blowing up houses and shops. It's true that some people in this region joined the ranks of the Islamic State, including people from my village, Abu Ajil, but it's not a reason to accuse a whole tribe, 40,000 people.
Over 20,000 residents in Tikrit have already fled the city. Iraqi troops are encouraging them to return.
We are now in Tikrit. I'd like to tell the families which have been displaced to come back home as soon as possible.
Baghdad lost Tikrit to the IS group last June in a lightning offensive that saw the extremists take 1/3 of the country. Beyond the fighting, the government faces a battle to regain the trust of the city's Sunni residents, a litmus test for future operations, including regaining control of Iraq's second city, Mosul.
Zaid al-Ali, what's your reaction to that?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, the reports of the burning of homes in Abu Ajil apparently are true. Apparently, that did happen. Now, the context in which that took place, I mean, there's been a very regrettable and tragic way in which the discussion has taken place over the past 8 years about that tribe's specific role in supporting Daesh. And of course, I agree with the quote that was made during that short report, where he said that the whole tribe shouldn't be punished for the actions of a few. Of course, every decent person should agree with that, and the burning of any single home shouldn't have taken place, right? But there's a context about how that discussion has been taking place in Iraq, and it's been led by some very negative elements in Iraq, and so it's highly charged. That tribe's particular situation has been very, very highly charged, and over the past few weeks, it's gotten even worse. So the fact that it took place in Abu Ajil should be put into that context. Now, there's a great amount of attention on Tikrit, and of course, you're right to describe it as a litmus test, because what happens in Tikrit will reflect on Mosul. If Tikrit is flattened and looted and people are murdered and so on and so forth, and are not allowed to go home, then that will reflect very badly on Mosul, and the people of Mosul will not be happy to support any government effort to retake their city. So therefore, and Baghdad knows that, they're very aware of that fact. So they're going to bear that in mind, and they're going to take it into account. Okay. The other thing that I should just mention is your other guest, I think his name is Tony Badran, was talking about the Sheikh of the Jabur, and he said that he chose to fight with ISIS and so on and so forth. Now, the Sheikh of the Jabur has no authority over the extended Jabur tribe, and clear evidence of that is that the Jabur in Tikrit are fighting alongside the government. and are very happy to do so. And the other thing that I would like to say is that 3 months ago, there was one Jabur tribesman in an Alam district, just off Tikrit, who was seen by Daesh carrying an Iraqi flag. And Daesh's reaction at the time was to murder dozens of Jaburis, to kidnap 200 of them, God knows where those bodies are today, to empty the whole area of all the Jaburis that were living in the place. They blew up everyone's homes, they stole everyone's cars, forced all the Jaburis to walk all the way to Kirkuk, etc., etc. And at the time, I didn't hear anyone expressing any sympathy for the Jaburis. No one in the international media said anything. No one said anything about them, anything, right?
But now suddenly, the guy that was quoted is fighting with the government.
I have a different point to yours, okay? My point is that now today we should believe that people are generally concerned about the possible excesses by Shia militias against Sunnis. But when real excesses were taking place by ISIS against Tikrit's population, when 200,000 people were thrown out of Tikrit by ISIS, when ISIS was killing, murdering, raping people, right, including women and children, when they were stealing and blowing up people's homes, etc., etc., I did not hear one word from any of you people. Right?
All right, I'd like to take some of the polemic out of this, if I could, and return to a sense of reality. Excuse me, I'm talking now. I'm talking now.
David Andelman first. All right,
Thank you. So, what I would like to say is that one thing that is missed in all of this is that they say there's going to be house-to-house fighting. One of these, Jessica or whatever, said that. The fact is that most of the people in Tikrit have fled. They left a long time ago. This is almost an empty ghost city. And if the troops
like Kobani was for the most
part. Basically, exactly. And to say that, oh, well, we've seized the city is a joke. I mean, they've seized some,
But there are reports of sporadic sharpshooters, of booby traps.
There are certainly.
And
it seems that the houses have been trapped with explosive.
Right.
And then
but
it's very difficult.
The people have fled. So they're not taking populations back. They're taking a few square miles of empty houses. It's meaningless. And it's not going to be the turning point in this war. And ISIS recognizes that. Yeah. They booby-trapped the whole place and left. And so did all the people.
You say it's not going to be the turning point in this war, but if they do spare those civilians, if they do treat the civilians who want to return...
It's not a question of sparing them. They're gone. They fled as soon as they had the opportunity to do that. There are almost nobody in that city left. It is a ghost city. And I defy people to find people who are actually standing around waiting to have these troops come in and start shooting at them. They're not crazy.
Tony Bedran.
No.
Well, just also to remember that it's not just what happens in the immediate aftermath once they take over the city. Let's assume they take over the city, and let's assume people come back, and let's assume in the immediate aftermath there are no sectarian revenge killings or the like that we've seen elsewhere in Iraq during this campaign. Let's assume all that. What happens after that, after the limelight kind of fades away, when people start coming in and starting pulling people from their home for questioning, or were you dealing with this, were you dealing with Daesh, were you not dealing with, and so on and so forth. What happens afterwards is another thing. And this is to say nothing of the political context, which is kind of not being discussed here. We're more concerned with the immediate humanitarian context. But with the various demands of the Sunnis and the political context, which the Iraqi
that's
government...
almost irrelevant, frankly.
Well, I mean, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. There's a lot of these Sunnis that are mobilized because they were completely alienated by the sectarian Shiite government, which is increasingly dominated by organs that are dominated by Iran. Absolutely. And that was the point of the quote
we understood you, please. But I would like to say something. I mean, it's no more the Maliki government. It's a new government. And, you know, even the Iranian have told this government, be careful not to conduct a Shia policy against Sunnis, because that was the uprising of Daesh, of the Islamic State. So I think that what you say, of course, is very important to be reckoned and very important to be respected by the Baghdad government. Because if you want, after this civil war, to restore peace in Iraq, you have to respect each other. I believe that today in Baghdad, to our information, there are people, as you've heard the Prime Minister, that they want to stop this, let's say, hunting of the other in each houses, because they want to, you know, pay let them pay what has been done in the past. If of course, they have to stop this civil war.
They have to stop revenge attacks.
That's it. Yeah. No revenge. But if there is revenge, and of course I agree, because who is Dajet? The Islamic State, it's the Saddam civil servants, the tribes, and the Sunnites, and those integrists, those fanatics who joined the three. It's a mixture of many elements. And it is true that if you want to, let's say, dismantle Daesh, you have to follow a peaceful settlement in Iraq with respect between Shia and Sunnis.
And all help welcome. You mentioned in part one that it's going to take a lot of people to get rid of the jihadists. On Capitol Hill on Wednesday, the head of the U.S. military, General Martin Dempsey, saying anything anyone does to counter ISIL is in the main a good outcome. In other words, the activities of the Iranians, the support of the Iraqi the support for the Iraqi security forces is a positive thing in military terms against ISIL, but we're all concerned about what happens after the drums start beating. How do you feel about the Iranians?
Well, you know, Iran is a great regional power, and you will not have peace in Iraq, peace in Syria without Iran. So it's part of the political, diplomatic solution. But it is true that Tehran is very much afraid of what is happening now in Iraq, because it has, it's tracking forces on the Kurds in Iran, and also because it's part of what's going to happen in Syria, because if the Damascus government collapses, then Daesh will come, and after Syria, it will be Lebanon. So it's, everything is, let's say, twinned, if I may say. And we have to find a global solution. And it's also true that there is another element, which is a nuclear question. So can we find a political and diplomatic solution for the two wars which are underway in Iraq and in Syria without finding a nuclear solution? That's a question mark.
Well, unfortunately, when Dempsey went up to the Hill, that was not one of the things that was necessarily on the agenda. But that is the core.
But they spent most of the time talking about Iran.
Right, exactly. Well, right, but Iran is the issue with Iran is not how it's reacting or behaving in Iraq and Syria. It's how it's behaving in Geneva, and it's how it's behaving in the talks, the nuclear talks, as you mentioned, many of which went on in Geneva. And it's also how Congress is going to behave if there is some kind of an agreement. And I believe there will be some kind of an agreement by the end of this month. I think they're moving in that direction. But what is very frightening is if Congress somehow manages to torpedo that, then all bets are off.
All bets are off. Tony Bedran, your thoughts on the Iranians bolstering Iraqi government forces?
Look, the Iranians, first of all, they're not afraid of ISIS or any of that. That's simply not true. The fact is that the Iranians see a fantastic opportunity with a green light from the Obama White House to spread their influence across the region, and they are doing that. And they are doing that in the most destabilizing fashion possible. So we talk about the Prime Minister Abadi in Iraq. The Prime Minister has no real power. Okay, there's a proliferation of militias, all of which answer to the IRGC and to Qassem Suleimani. They don't answer to Prime Minister Abadi. He has no power over them. He has no power to control them. And these same militias are now also starting to pick up fights with the Kurds up in the north over certain areas. And we will see soon. That's another flashpoint that's going to come across with Kirkuk. So the Iranians are spreading their influence. They're spreading their influence in Syria. Bashar al-Assad is almost irrelevant without Iran at this point. His military cannot even conduct operations on its own. It always does so with the integrated forces with Hezbollah and other Afghani militias who are now pushing down to the Golan Heights and so on. So the people who are pushing towards Lebanon and in Syria is not ISIS really. It's the IRGC IRGC. So this is going to have a profoundly destabilizing effect in the region.
Or it could have a profoundly stabilizing effect. You know?
I can't agree. First of all, I'm sorry to say, the Iranian fear Daesh, fear the Islamic State, and they are not. No. I'm sorry, you are wrong. You are wrong because I can tell you that when we were in Tehran, I led, diplomatic missions there with several MPs, and I can tell you that the Iranians were very afraid of what's going to happen with Daesh. So,
I'm sure.
No, you cannot say that. And the influence of this is true that there is an influence play between the Iranian and Saudi Arabia, because in fact also the war in Syria is a war through proxies, because everyone is trying to have its champion to combat the other champion. You know, the Saudis have played God and played with fire by helping all those rebels, as well as Qatar, as well as other states, because it's a general poker liar play. Everyone, especially all states around Syria, have dubious policy. I say dubious policy. So when I hear that the Iranians are just trying to increase influence, they just want to see that if, of course, because they are frightened by one thing. When they speak of Syria as forefront, is because some also wanted to bomb Tehran and bomb the nuclear site. So I think that you have to keep down.
What the Iranians really want is they want to create a Shiite crescent all around the Red Sea. Okay, they want to create an area that is, and that's where all of the oil. Remember, all of the oil is in southern Iraq. It's in eastern Saudi Arabia, where the Shiites are, and it's in Iran. And they want to create a Shiite crescent. The rest of it, they do not care about. They do not want instability to basically.
They fear instability.
Right. And so that's what that is their goal. That is their, and we must not lose track of that.
Zaid al-Ali, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, well, I'm not a geopolitical expert, so I'm not the best person to speak about this, but I do know my own country, and what I can say about Iran and its influence in Iraq is that it's always spoken about in very vague terms, and people who talk up Iranian influence, people who talk up Iranian influence tend to ignore lots of inconvenient facts. And for example, if Iran is so almighty and powerful in Iraq, why was Maliki forced from office? Maliki was their man in office, and he was forced out because of all sorts of other factors, despite their best wishes. And why, when Maliki was replaced, why was their man, Iran's man, not chosen? Why was it someone like Abadi, who they're very, very suspicious of? Abadi has, up until 2014, had never been to Iran, not on a personal visit and not on a professional visit. And for Iran, that's not something that they look upon very kindly. And yet that person became prime minister because the Mirja'i and Najaf wanted him to become prime minister. And so despite Iran's best wishes, Maliki was forced from office, and someone they didn't want was put into office. Now, of course, Abadi has nowhere near as much power as Maliki had, so on and so forth, but everyone knows that whoever occupies that position grows into it and can develop a lot of power. So that's not something that Iran took very lightly, but it happened nevertheless. The other point that I would just like to make very briefly is something that Mr. Meyer said earlier about peace, that you need peace and so on and so forth. That's also very true. There does need to be reconciliation and so on and so forth in Iraq for this, for any victory against ISIS to be long-lasting. But I would also like to tie that point to what Mr. Adelman said about the Iraqi army not existing. And it's true, the Iraqi army doesn't exist and didn't exist in 2014. But one of the principal reasons why that was the case was because of extremely high-level corruption, very, very terrible levels of corruption in the country. So even if you have reconciliation, even if there's victory against ISIS, this unbridled corruption that's been eating away at the state for the past 12 years, and even from time before, really needs to be dealt with very, very urgently. And that's something that all of Iraq's political class have to answer for, because they're the ones who constructed it, and they're the ones who propagate it, and they're the ones who profit from it. And people are the ones who suffer, but they profit.
Well, just remember, first of all, Maliki was the hand-picked choice of the Americans before they left. Of course, they didn't quite realize what they were getting. That's another issue.
Sure.
Second of all, corruption has by no means ended in that country. It is endemic. It is to the bone, and it is going to be impossible.
But that was the point that I made. What I mean is that corruption needs to be needs to be taken care of. And corruption's gotten worse since 2010. It hasn't improved. It's gotten much worse since 2010 as a result of Maliki's government. And that needs to be taken care of extremely urgently if any peace is going to hold. Because corruption is the reason why the Iraqi military didn't exist. On paper, it all looked fine. But with all the ghost soldiers, the fake training sessions, the fake equipment, and so on and so forth, they simply weren't able to put up a show.
All right,
if I just one last point to interject, let's interject an analogy to say when we talk about who is the prime minister and whether he was picked by Iran or not. Okay, who holds the power on the ground? Let's do the same analogy with the IRGC's other and oldest asset in Lebanon, for instance. Does it matter who the prime minister in Lebanon is? Of course it doesn't matter. Does it matter what the military does? It doesn't matter. What matters is the asset that the Iranians have on the ground, which is the strongest power in the country. That's what you have now, the same model you have now in Baghdad with those militias. It doesn't really matter if they picked Prime Minister Abadi, debatable whether they were really opposed to him or not. The fact is the real power is not Mr. Abadi.
All right. Yeah. Can I just say something very briefly about that?
Very briefly, because
Very briefly. The analogy is incorrect because no one in Iraq has the amount of power that Hezbollah has in Lebanon. So it just simply doesn't apply. And if it didn't matter, then why did Iran, if it didn't matter who's prime minister in Iraq, then why did Iran fight tooth and nail to keep Maliki in power? Obviously, it mattered to them. So.
I want to, before we go, turn our attention to Syria because it is the 4th anniversary of the civil war there. Jacques Miard, you were at the end of February in Damascus. Lawmakers there telling you it'll be chaos throughout the Middle East if the West proceeds in trying to push out Assad. That visit making a lot of headlines in this country. You went with a socialist senator.
Not only in this country.
We were with 2 senators and a socialist member of parliament, my friend Gérard Bapp, yes.
At this particular point in time, though, when we look at this complex puzzle between what's going on...
That's a puzzle, yes.
...in Syria and what's going on in Iraq, normalizing ties with Bashar al-Assad, is that tantamount to basically betraying the moderate rebels who are fighting both the Assad government and the jihadists in places like Aleppo?
Who are those so-called moderate rebels? Please tell me. Are they those who have been, helped by the Americans, armed by the Americans and the French, and 2 days or 3 days ago turned to al-Nusra? Who are they? I think no, please.
Because some are saying that this would be a formidable recruiting tool for ISIS if there is this normalization.
First of all, we were very aware that people told us in 15 days Bashar is no more there. He's out, it's finished, and the rebels will win. Okay. But 4 years of combat, and he's still there. So what we've said to our government, because we are speaking to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he said maybe you just told you a story. And in fact, on the ground, it is true that Bashar, first of all, is not winning military, but he hasn't lost military.
It's a stalemate.
He's still here. Secondly, he has, as it has been said, allies, Russian, Hezbollah, and Iran. And there is a fight of proxies against the others. So he's here. And you will not find a political solution without taking into account his existence. That means people who were fighting Bashar and now are discussing with him in Moscow. The envoy of the Secretary General of the UN is discussing with Bashar and trying to have a ceasefire in Aleppo.
But if you have a political solution, how are you going to get these forces who are outside of the whole to stop fighting?
That's the point, because those forces, as you mentioned, are they Syrian or are they foreigners?
All right, let me bring in Tony Bedran on this.
This is the point. And when
this is the good thing when you go to Damascus and speak with Bashar al-Assad. No, you sound like him.
No, I'm not only talking to Bashar in Damascus. We are talking to also people who are in the region, who know the region pretty well. And we say, if you drop Bashar today, if you take it out, then you will have chaos in Syria and you will have chaos in Lebanon.
Tony Bedran. Bedran.
the point. You know, it's
let me bring in Tony Bedran, because we're almost out of time.
To criticize, but it's also very difficult to find a solution.
Tony Bedran.
Look, look, we can repeat Bashar al-Assad's talking point all day long. If this is what order looks like in Syria, then that's great. I don't think this is all propaganda that, you know, if he falls, ISIS will take over Damascus and take over Lebanon. I mean, the ISIS, even in the height of its power, when it tried to expand south to Damascus and to the areas, was pushed back immediately. I mean, so let's not go crazy. Mr. Miyar here is denying the existence of something much more fundamental. The fact is that there are people in Syria who rose up against Bashar al-Assad. And like he said, yes, Bashar al-Assad had allies like terrorists like Hezbollah and terror-sponsoring state like Iran and Russia come to his side, and there was nobody from the other side that took an equal amount of support to the people of Syria who rose up against Bashar al-Assad, not even when he gassed them with chemical weapons, incidentally. So the idea that we're going to negate these people and somehow reduce the uprising against Bashar al-Assad to, if Bashar falls, ISIS takes over Syria and takes over Lebanon in regard, which is absurd.
I think I'm sorry, your analysis is wrong on one point. Is that because Bashar is keeping unity of the Syrian army, and if he drops, you laugh, but no, can you show me? Are you going to put your head? Are you going to put your head on this kind of laughing? Because you know the point is that
the Syrian army cannot conduct operations.
No. It cannot conduct operation.
Gentlemen, unfortunately,
I'm sorry to say, it is what has been said in the Western world for years and years, but it's still there. It's still there.
All right, Jacques Millard, we're going to have to leave it there.
Is helping me. He's still there. The army is much stronger than you believe.
We're out of time, unfortunately. Jacques Millard, I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank as well David Andelman. I want to thank Zaid Al-Ali for joining us from northern Iraq, and Tony Bedran in New York City. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Il sait le type à New York, là,